here's the thing. Even if most of the work wasn't principal photography, let's say most of the work was in post-production to go back and finish CGIing everything, or changing these dwarves, or adding or re-editing, or whatever. This is why Disney has a branch of Industrial Light and Magic in the UK. Even though they own it, they use the British labor there, they get a film tax credit for it. That's part of it. But even after you take out all the film tax credits, Disney is probably still looking at, I think, at least $300 million on the low end for just production.
Renegade Online.
There's a really fun thing about this week. And one of the fun things about the week is that we have watched now, as analysts, we've watched, we've paid attention, we've commentated on it, about the number of dislikes, the ratios that were hitting Disney on the YouTube trailers. And so we've never seen anything be this unpopular with YouTube viewers. So now the question becomes, and we get an answer to this. When the movie comes out, does the negative PR that we've seen across YouTube, does that translate to a poor box office? Or is that divorced from reality? We don't know the answer to that yet. We're starting to get a good inkling of what that's going to be based on the pre-ticket sales. Mm-hmm. There are those who say, Valiant, that Disney cleaned this up, that they cleaned this up well with the red carpet to the degree that it could actually perform similarly to Mufasa. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but there are those who say that they've managed to get her under control for the past 3 or 4 months. And because of that, maybe the controversy has died down, and maybe wives and mothers are going to take daughters and nieces to go see this, and maybe it'll do okay. I know that you, of course, realize the budget and the cost, and it's insane, but, you know, maybe it could make something respectable. I don't know, but we're going to find that out this week, and that's going to be interesting to see after all, this has been years of this. Finally, we get the answer.
Yeah, and look, I have, and I'll remind everybody out there, I've cautioned people that, especially with its proximity to Captain Falcon, you cannot gauge the long-term performance of this type of movie. Not this movie specifically, but this type of movie. You can't gauge it by what an MCU title does. A typical Phase 4 or 5 MCU title. Captain America, DEI, followed it to a T. I mean, you set your watch by it, right? You saw what it opened with, and after about 5 days, it had about half its box office in the till. That's it. That's what happened. Snow White is still a family movie. It's a children's movie. More specifically, it's a movie built for younger female audiences, little girls. It's a very different dynamic. It may still open at 50 million or 60 million or maybe less, but that doesn't mean that the second weekend is going to fall off 68% like Captain Falcon. So you have to wait and see. What's really going to matter is once the audiences that are going to go see it as early adopters Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you're going to have to see what their reaction is and how well they will get other people to go see it based on that. That's all there is to it. Now, again, this movie, if we're going to compare it to something, it's got to look like The Little Mermaid. And The Little Mermaid opened with what we think is going to be a lot bigger number than what Snow White is supposed to get coming this weekend. The Little Mermaid opened a lot closer to summer. It opened around Memorial Day weekend as opposed to this opening in March. Now, you could say Little Mermaid had more competition. Yeah. But at the same time, that's a much bigger time of the year for a movie like that to run out, like a long set of legs, versus right now. Captain Falcon didn't grow a big set of legs either. Now, I'm not saying this won't. I think this will do better than Captain Falcon, but the watermark to pass is Little Mermaid. So that was $560 million back in 2023. We got to see if Snow White can get to that point.
The interesting thing, Valiant, is this film will come out against the least amount of competition that I can recall. To give you an idea of that, and you may have covered this in the past, this weekend that we're currently in, not a single film passed domestically $10 million. No. And I'm not saying on a given day. I'm saying for the entire weekend. Not a single film for the entire weekend, 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, managed to accumulate even $10 million. So Snow White literally comes out with nothing for people to go see other than Snow White.
No, and that's a very limited size audience, right? That's a certain, and I don't mean small, but it's a very certain demographic. It's not Lilo and Stitch. Lilo and Stitch is going to be much bigger. That comes out around Memorial Day weekend. It comes about a week off of How to Train Your Dragon, which that's going to be an interesting dynamic. That's going to hit boys, girls. It's going to hit the younger generation. It's going to hit the older, slightly older generation that grew up with it, 20 years ago. And it looks good. It looks really fun and entertaining. So the thing I keep talking about with Snow White, the one thing that I don't know yet, and this is why it's really hard to tell, is that until we get some initial projections on what the international box office opening is going to look like, it's really hard to say. This thing could, in theory, play a lot better overseas than it does here. I mean, it might do 50 million in the US on its opening weekend. What if it does 85, 90, or even 100 million internationally? I don't know. I haven't seen any numbers on this yet. So we're gonna have to wait for that so we can kind of gauge it. Because even though the domestic box office might not be great, it might get, I don't want to say bailed out because that's the wrong word, but it might get bailed out by international box office. The movie's still going to have to get to roughly $800 million. And I'll just, to remind everybody, and we're going to, close the Snow White debate here. I want to show everybody what we're talking about. These are the financial returns. This is it. Hidden Heart Productions. This is Snow White. This is the company that was formed by the Walt Disney Company to film Snow White. This is how they do this in the UK. One project per business entity. So this is only Snow White. And there is no marketing through here. It is strictly production only by British law. People keep asking me, well, some of that's marketing. No, it isn't. It can't be unless Disney is violating British law, which I seriously doubt they would be, because then they would lose all their film tax credits. Okay? The cost of sales that you're seeing there, okay? Disney builds these things year over year to make sure that they only put in just as much money as they need to complete the portion of the project they're doing during that reporting period, minus what they expect to get back in film tax credits. Okay? So in other words, and this is in British pounds, this is not US dollars, this is British pounds, 67.6 million British pounds sterling for the period that ended December of 2023. That was from August 1st of 22 to December 31st of 2023. 145 million was spent, 145 million British pounds sterling through the end of the reporting period that Disney reported through July 31st, 22. That 145 million, that's the bulk of your principal photography right there. Your pre-production and your principal photography. 145 million. That following period, 67 million, you might have still had some principal photography in there. And you probably also had a lot of post-production work. What did Disney do 2 months before this period ended? They delayed the film an entire year. And that's the first time we saw a piece of concept art for the 7 dwarves, the 7 CGI dwarves. So by that point, plus the earnings period that came before it, which was negligible, but for people who want to know, well, you didn't show it. I'm showing it. Okay. About 4 million British pounds through July 2020, and then about 1.2 million because of COVID delays, right? This movie was pushed back because of a lot of COVID delays at the end of July 2021. So the bulk of it happened here in 22 and in 23. Now, the bottom line is what that means is that Disney spent, if you convert this right now to US dollars, the gross spend for the Walt Disney Company on Snow White up through 15 months ago. 15 months ago. Before any of this reshooting, any of this redo, all the other crap they've done in the last year was done. $282 million. Now, they got about 60 million of that. You see this tax on loss, and it's a positive number because it's not in brackets. It means it's a positive. If it's in brackets, it's negative. If it's not in brackets, it's positive. They got back about 45 million pounds in British film tax credits from British taxpayers. So that brought the net cost down to about 200, and I think this is it. Let me make sure I got the right one. Here you go. This is it. 222 million is the net cost to Disney after their film tax credits. Now, what happened in the last, here's the question. How much more money did Disney spend on Snow White since January 1st of last year? Because I promise you it's more.
There are suggestions that the entire film was scrapped, right? Because how do you go from having dirty bandits to CGI dwarfs? Because those were not dwarfs. So that's a totally different story. So if they in fact went from a modern retelling with the dirty hippies to, hey, let's go back and remake the animated now, then you've got two films. So you could be seeing, I don't know, I don't want to say double, but you could be seeing like a 75% increase.
You don't have to, you don't have to rebuild the sets again, right? That massive expense is done. You don't have to redo costumes. You don't have to redo props. If you still were able to secure the sound stage or something or whatnot, and with production being as, there's not as much production as there was pre-COVID, probably Disney could get it because they have good relationships with places like Pinewood and Shinfield and these other ones. So who knows? Even if most of the work wasn't principal photography, let's say most of the work was in post-production to go back and finish CGIing everything or changing these dwarves or adding or re-editing or whatever. This is why Disney has a branch of Industrial Light and Magic in the UK. So they can, even though they own it, they use the British labor there, they get a film tax credit for it. So, I mean, that's part of it. But even after you take out all the film tax credits, Disney is probably still looking at, I think, at least $300 million on the low end for just production. And then imagine another $100 million in marketing, which they're probably going to spend more. You're really looking at right now, you got a movie that needs to make $800 million. The question is, will Snow White make $800 million in the global box office? That seems unlikely given Disney's recent track record, especially with things like Little Mermaid.
And by the way, you covered the soundtrack last week. One of the things that makes these Disney princess movies go viral is a very strong soundtrack.
Right.
However, the soundtrack's been out. And I don't think that they have enough earworms. I don't sense that there's we don't talk about Bruno in this one to turn this into something that's trending and viral like Frozen was.
Well, they're hoping for that one song to do it.
Yep.
The Waiting on a Wish. That's what they're hoping is going to be Frozen 2.0. And I made that point, I think, last week. But there's that new song from the Prince. Oh, God. Princess Problems. Oh, my God. That's awful.
Wait. I haven't listened to that.
Oh, I have. I have it on X.
Princess Problems is sung by the Prince?
Well, it's his part of the song. It may be a duet.
Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.